Good evening and welcome to Ridgecrest Talk, the Thursday night edition. I'm Al Huey along with my partner, Robert Eierman. And tonight our special guest that we're so happy that could join us is Mr. Gary Parsons from the city of Ridgecrest. He is, is your official title Economic Development Director?
Economic Development Project Manager.
Project Manager. Okay, well welcome to Ridgecrest Talk.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming
Thanks
in.
for coming down.
You're more than welcome.
Now, before we went live, I was asking you how long you've been with the city.
I've been with the city about a little over 16 years.
First came on in what?
Around 2000.
Oh, so I have been here a little longer than you.
Yes, around 2000. And been living in the valley for 16 years now.
Okay.
So I'm a newbie.
Okay.
By some people's scale, that would be true.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So economic development is kind of important. When we went through the recent campaign season, just about every one of the candidates running has something to say about economic development.
But it's kind of like motherhood and apple pie. I don't know of anybody who's against economic development. There might be some old guard that are, but very few.
So what is on the table right now? Well, what do you see on the horizon for the city and economic development?
Well, let me start off by saying if I asked every person in town what economic development was, I probably would get 25,650 different answers.
Okay.
It's a very generalized, sort of overutilized term in some degree. But it essentially, in the city's parlance, and remember you got to look at the city as a company or an individual, if you want to look at it that way. It is economic development is how it earns more money, how it raises money, how it generates more revenue year after year after year. It also provides job opportunities for the citizens of Ridgecrest. And in Ridgecrest, we have a unique situation in that we have a lot of people who are employed, who are well-educated, typically work on the base or station, and are engineers, scientists, technicians, and highly educated people. And then we have another group of people in town who are perhaps a little less educated, very hardworking people, and they are typically, we see a gap in employment in that area. So, and they typically work in service industries, in the stores, in the hotels, and in the services that provide services to the people who work on the base. So, economic development in this town deals with trying to increase the employment to some degree of that group, as much as it does sort of the high end. It's nice to talk about more jobs on base, and that's important, very important. It's the heart of the house.
But it's something the city really has no control over.
But it's not something that I can change tomorrow with what I do. But what I can do is create more jobs and opportunity for the people in the lower categories. And by lower, I don't mean lower in social standard or anything else, but in terms of economic employment that work in the service industries and other areas. And we can increase those, and then we can bring new types of jobs, diversifying the economy some degree from the base. We don't want. The key to there is trying to diversify the economy in a way that does not affect your bread and butter, the base opportunities. So we don't want to bring in, for example, an industry that would cause conflicts with the base operations, let's say, for example. But we do want to bring in industries that can work in concert with the base, that it doesn't affect the base operations, but diversifies the economy a little bit, so that if we have unfortunately a base turned down or a budget turned down in the Navy that affects this base, that we won't see that huge shock in the economy, and brings in other opportunities. The other thing is that, unfortunately, and you probably heard this before, our largest employer in town, the base itself, not the employees of the base,
Right.
The base itself doesn't pay any taxes to the city.
Correct.
So basically, in most cities, that's where a good share of the tax base comes from, is the industry and commercialization. We just don't have that in this particular town. So economic development in this town, when I look at it, deals with essentially three major areas. One is increasing taxes and revenue for the city, this person, if you would. This is called the city. And that comes from sales tax, It comes from property tax. It comes from TOT, or transit occupancy tax, for the hotel rooms, and some other miscellaneous other kinds of assessments and fees and stuff that we charge. The second major area is employment. That deals with existing employment, with this category we have that is we don't have full employment in, increasing and diversifying the economy in terms of from the base to whatever that might be, and I can give you some ideas of examples of what we're looking at. And trying to improve the quality of life to some degree by providing more shopping opportunities and other things that, you know, whether it be shopping or movie theaters or bowling alleys or whatever that the community might want to see. So, you know, that is actually what I define as economic development.
So you mentioned that you don't want to have anything that interferes with the base.
That's correct.
Give me some examples of what might interfere with
well, let's just assume that we were really lucky and we decided to have U.S. Steel locate here.
Okay.
And U.S. Steel would have smokestacks that are 35 feet tall right by the runway access.
Okay.
Or air pollution, or noise, or nowadays even electronic issues associated with wideband access.
Didn't we even have something like that in the recent past with discussion of a solar plant out west of
the solar, yeah,
city?
the issue, that's a good example of how we interact with the base, and I do, and other people's in the city, and certainly when I say I mean a team. It's not just me. I don't do anything just on my own. Is that when they were locating at the solar plant outside the base, or outside on Brown Road is where it was located at, one of the issues that initially came up, the base was concerned with, was reflectability of the mirrors when they're flying their aircraft. Will their pilots and test pilots be blinded by the sun coming off? It was later determined by test and evaluation that the base did as well, that wasn't going to be an issue. Another issue was IR.
Got about 30 seconds before we go to break.
Okay, another issue was IR, infrared, and that got resolved as well. So that's an example where we interact with the base to make sure we don't have a problem.
Well, we're going to continue our discussions here with Economic Development Project Manager Gary Parsons. When we come back, don't go away. We'll be back with much more here on the Thursday night edition of Ridgecrest Talk.
And welcome back to the Thursday evening edition of Ridgecrest Talk. I'm Robert Eierman, along with co-host Al Huey, and we are delighted to have with us today Mr. Gary Parsons from the city of Ridgecrest, the Economic Development Project Manager. Thanks again for being with us, Gary.
You're more than welcome.
You had a question that you wanted to bring up, Al?
Well, since we were talking, we were kind of giving the broad definition of economic development and some of the things that the city looks to do and not to do with interfering with our main employer here, the base. Recently, the city used TAB money,
Yes.
I believe, to do some venture capitalism
Depends on
type
your
thing.
definition, yeah.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that briefly?
Sure can. TAB stands for Tax Allocation Bond Financing, which is a mechanism which the city utilizes to, we basically refinanced existing bond debt, and like you do at your house, and we reduce the interest rate and gain some principal. We ended up gaining quite a bit of principal. Turned out to be about $25 million we could utilize throughout the city.
Wow.
The city chose to utilize...
Now, back up. Before you say we could use that throughout the city.
Right. Meaning the departments, when I say
Was
that.
it earmarked for any specifics?
Yeah. There are, as in any government funding, there are all kinds of strings and bells and whistles that go with that money. It has to be utilized for the things that were identified in the bond issue, which were generally physical items. For example, streets is a classic example. A good share of the money went into streets. more than 50% of it was utilized for streets.
What about parks?
Parks did not receive any of the money. Oh, I'm sorry. What am I saying? This parks received $2.5 million. That has to be utilized for for physical things. In other words, you can't utilize it for programs or administration and stuff like that. It has to be used for physical infrastructure, or in my case, it has to be used for equipment or supplies or something else like that. And then there was a certain allocation made for economic development, which was about $2 million initially. The city utilized in economic development, we utilized that money for three major areas. The first one was industrial development. Our goal was to bring in new jobs, create new tax base through sales tax and other things. And the council chose to, in the end, select WIDA, which was a company that's utilized for generating new leads, new businesses coming into town from out of town, and it has quite a track record and is developing a new web page for us for economic development, interactive web page. And then we chose to Protexa, which is a biomedical technical medical company who is looking at creating new jobs and is moving forward very well. And then we picked what was Cal UAS at the time. Now it's Monarch, which makes for commercial use, and I'll use the bad word they don't like, which is drones. Right. And unmanned aerial systems is the appropriate word. I think they're changing that technology name as they go along. But and then also another company, EH Group, which is going to be funding a biochemical refinery, and that is a much longer term. And
now,
so,
going back to Protexa, weren't they also involved in funding that in some way? What do they call it? Free trade zone?
well, the free trade zone is a separate thing, and basically what that does is that we can utilize that. The way that's set up is essentially when Protexa was to bring in parts to assemble what they call RoboDoc, which is a medical robotic device that's used for telemedicine. And basically they can bring in the parts, they can do assembly here, and they don't have to pay import tax on those parts. And then when they sell it out to the United States, if it's sold in the United States, they don't have to pay tax. So it's a tax benefit.
And I was a bit confused reading up on this. Yeah. Is the city pursuing the free trade zone, or is Protexa going to pursue
Well, the city has to be the applicant for the free trade zone. A company cannot be. Okay. But we're not going to go through the effort of creating a free trade zone unless we have companies that can utilize it. And Protexa and a couple of other people we're talking to now have shown great interest in that. And once we form the zone, then any company within that zone can utilize the zone. So it's an economic development tool we can use to help bring businesses in town.
Yeah, it would be an enticement for someone to come in
to
use that.
Have you looked into this before bringing this to the council? Like, my concern is we've got a military R&D facility here. And I don't know how happy or enthused they would be to have China flying in and out of here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No. This is a company that's in the United States company typically. I mean, and generally that's the case. And it might be buying parts from different parts of the world. Unfortunately, a lot of our military parts have got stuff from all over the world in them as well.
That's true.
And so basically the company just buys these parts, and instead of paying import tax when it brings it in, it only has to pay the sales tax when we sell it out. So it's just an economic
doesn't look like there's going to be any conflict with the base.
No.
I don't know if either of you noticed, but over there on that side of the room, there's a big elephant, and it's called Super Walmart.
Yeah.
So we want to get into talking about that. And
I've never heard of it, don't know anything about it, never been asked a question about it.
Okay. Well,
so
cancel the show.
No problem at all.
Out of here.
No, not true. Not true.
We've got a wager to make with you on this.
Yeah, we do. We're going to have a wager on this one.
Yeah.
Walmart is, we have the privilege, I believe, at this point, and I'm not 100% sure of this fact, but pretty close, to being the longest running Walmart development project in California.
I think you are the winner. On that.
How about the United States?
Well, since California has one of the slowest development processes in the country, that's probably a true statement too. I just haven't really looked at that. The interesting thing about the Walmart project was that Walmart chose a site to start with, which is located at Bowman and China Lake, across from the existing Walmart, essentially. That is probably the worst development site you could pick.
Really?
In Ridgecrest. It is the
So
drainage.
close to the flood zone.
It is the drainage site for all of the water that comes from the mountains to the south of them and in there, and then it flows through there and then down Bowman Channel, sort of. Yeah, kind of. It kind of goes other places too, unfortunately, and ends up down in Mirror Lake. So essentially, they picked a terrible site. So engineering was a disaster for this thing.
We need to go to break here.
Okay.
Shortly.
Well, not quite yet, but sure.
10 seconds.
Oh,
now.
10 seconds.
Yeah.
I guess we're going to
So
have to
we'll be
leave.
back, and we're going to talk more about the Walmart Super Center. So don't go away. You're going to really enjoy the next part.
And welcome back to the final segment of Thursday evening edition of Ridgecrest Talk. And we've been talking about the Super Walmart, and we'll continue with that. So you mentioned that they picked the worst site. Has that been a delay factor?
Oh, that caused a huge delay. The engineering and public improvements section of that site required them to do a lot of flood control, street work, and a lot of other things that a normal site, say, might not require.
Okay.
Just to give you an example, they're looking at almost over, and I won't be exact because I'm not the engineer, so forgive me if I'm not quite accurate on this, but over 125,000 yards of dirt has to be moved into the site just to get the pad of the building high enough so that it doesn't flood when it rains. So it just gives you an idea of the flood problems they have on that site. But basically the other issue is that we've gone through a litany of engineering firms and consultants. We started off with council wanting certain things in the project, and as councils changed, those things, requirements changed. We went through an issue with the planning where we had a planning. Remember, the Bowman Channel at one point was supposed to be a park, and we actually did a study to determine whether that was feasible or not. We've gone through a ton of different options on this.
Roundabout.
The roundabout, you're correct. That was another interesting thing, and those things take time. They're 6-month type of
Yeah, you're talking about being a long project. I remember somebody ran for council in 2004 when this was being brought to the city. So we're talking.
This is the guy you see all the time in the mirror?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're talking what? 11 years?
Yes, well, I don't know if it's 11. I remember 7 or 8, but could be 11. Who knows?
And just
I try to
did some
forget that,
checking.
but that's okay.
You've driven maybe south on 395 going past Victorville. You may have noticed a Super Walmart down
absolutely.
there. And I did some checking on theirs. And theirs started, as best I can tell, 2008.
Yes.
And they went to the Planning Commission for final approval in 2011. Broke ground 2012. And it's finished last year.
I can give you 3 other Walmarts, the same situation.
And you know what delayed them? The outrage from the public over a super center.
Right.
Which goes on almost every place.
So you were just going to say there's a number of projects that have been
done prior, that have been completed and started while we're still working on this one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway.
And certainly that's true. And I'm sure Walmart would be in the same thing saying them. They've literally, we're working on our 4th engineering team. The Walmart has gone through 4 engineering teams on this project during the development of the project. And each engineering team has gone back and redesigned and redesigned and redesigned. So we've, got several plans sitting
I
in our
thought they had a
office.
boilerplate for building these.
This is nothing to do, by the way, with the building itself. Nothing to do with the building. This
Okay.
has to do with the streets, with the flood control, which was a huge issue, with the layout and landscaping requirements of the parking lot. It has to do with a whole lot of other things in the building.
Okay.
The building's been approved for at least a year and a half, 2 years.
Okay.
So that's not been the issue at all.
So it's not been that Walmart has lost interest.
No. In fact, I was talking to the one of the Walmart consulting team just before I came here, and we're getting very, very close. They're working on issues with Lahontan, which is an entity that works on surface water and drainage and issues like that. And then they're working with California Fish and Game, and getting those all that permitting finished.
I have never known there to be fish over there in that area.
Yeah, I know, but there seems to be, according to Fish and Game, there's enough money to require well, that's what it. I'm not going to go there. I'm going to leave that one alone. I'm going to leave that one alone because basically, the issue is there Mojave ground squirrel on the property, and is there nesting owls? That's their burrowing owls, if you will.
Oh, okay.
So that's their issue.
EIR
But they're
would
supposed to be
have
done.
proved that out.
EIR was started but not finished. Our Walmart's very unique. We did you remember we didn't do a CEQA on this one. We did at the Walmart's decision. We did we went through another process, and so we never had to go through the EIR, finish the EIR. We did the EIR, but we never certified it or finished it.
So without revealing anything that you can't say or reveal,
no.
When can our fellow citizens hope to see a groundbreaking?
Well, groundbreaking is at the discretion of Walmart, so it's hard for me to tell you that. But
Okay.
I can tell you that we should be finished from the city's. Well, we essentially are finished from the city's perspective. We have to do a rework of what is called the DDA, or the development agreement, with the city. That's just to bring it up to scale, and we'll sign off. And then the Walmart at that point is free to do the groundbreaking whenever they want to, and they're through the whole regulatory process. So, you know.
When do you think? Come on.
See, then we're going to go into an interview, and in a year and a half, you're going to say, "Well, see, you told me that."
I know.
I know. That's where I have a problem. I really suspicion that we should have some pretty good news by spring of this year. I'll leave it that way. I'll leave it not a date, but
So you're not going to say that we're going to turn any dirt in 2015?
no, spring of this year.
So
We're in January, so spring
Right.
would be April, May, June, that kind of thing.
is when we might see
Mm-hmm.
some dirt turned over. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to get out with a shovel and start turning the dirt over.
No. I'm talking about official,
Oh, okay.
where they come out and
You got to
do the
watch
photo-
out when you make those.
Yeah, I know. So Robert and I talked. If what you're saying, we're going to have a groundbreaking sometime in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
If that's true, we're going to buy you a steak dinner.
Okay, sounds
If
good.
it's not true,
Yes, I have to buy you a steak dinner. I get it.
no. You buy us hamburgers of our choice.
Oh, okay.
That's
Well,
not fair to make.
Because you
buy-
got to do two, we're going to have to do
Okay,
one.
that's fine.
Is that a deal?
That's a deal.
All right.
All right, there you go.
You heard it right here.
See, I just got bribed, guys. No, I don't have anything to do with that.
I mean, personally, I am just thrilled I would be thrilled to have the Super Walmart here. It would be just
Well, I have all
wonderful in
kinds of
my opinion.
concerns.
Well-
My biggest concern is the new Albertsons.
Yeah,
30 seconds, all we have left here.
okay. Remember, the new Walmart is essentially a primary addition of grocery.
right.
So
Yes.
we'll see how that affects our local stores.
Well, we get you back again in the future someday when you're not too busy talking to
After
Walmart.
you buy me the steak dinner.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, that wraps it up for us, and look forward to that Super Walmart coming, and we'll be back next week, same time, same place.
Adios.
See you then.